Good afternoon, members of Parliament, support staff, those in the public tribune, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to this public meeting number 5, question hour of today, Monday, November 28, 2023. I would like to give a special welcome to the Honorable Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunication, Mr. Arthur Lembrix, and his support staff. We have established a quorum of 9 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from the following members: MP Solange Duncan. Are there any notifications? I see MP Grisha Halliger-Martin. MP Grisha Halliger-Martin, you have the floor.
A pleasant good afternoon to you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to the Minister and his support staff. Good afternoon to my fellow colleagues, those of you visiting, a lot of you visiting with us in the Tribune. Good afternoon to you all, and also good afternoon to my people listening online, viewing online or listening on the radio. Mr. Chairman, I would like to just provide this notification to you regarding the unfortunate situation regarding the immigration officer. It has touched me dearly. Why? Because I too was once a daughter, not once, still is a daughter. My mother was also an immigration officer, and she worked double shifts a lot, so she worked hard. I hardly see, and you heard me many times say that my grandparents raised me because of the work that was, it took a toll on her. It took a lot working at immigration in that position. Now today, present day, what the situation is with them in the present day is not the same as back then. They're working double shifts. They're at a bare minimum, and they're already walking on thin ice with how the work environment is. I do not know the complete details of why this immigration officer was suspended, but do know that it does have my attention. And I mean, this is a perfect example, and if my conclusion serves me right, again, victimization, this time victimization of the justice workers. And I'm going to be monitoring it. The Minister of Justice should be receiving a letter from me very soon based on what the outcome is in the next couple of days. But this, Mr. Chairman, is again clearly another victimization of this collision to, again, the justice workers. And I'm getting tired, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we're trying to focus on things that are going on. We all know Population Day is there, but I mean, why do we continue to just, what is it with this government? What is it, Mr. Chairman, with this government and the civil servants, especially the justice workers? What is it? When are you going to stop? Leave the people alone. Get them paid. Why are we attacking them? So it has my concern, Mr. Chairman, and she'll be hearing from me shortly.
Thank you, MP Grisha Halliger-Martin. The next person is MP Sarah Westcott-Williams. MP Westcott, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good afternoon to you, a good afternoon to my colleagues, to our support staff, a good afternoon to all in the Tribune. Welcome, a good afternoon to all tuned in to this meeting by different means, and a good afternoon and a word of welcome to the Minister and his support staff. Mr. Chairman, I made a general call, and I want to repeat it here because I think it's urgent. And that is a call for the Prime Minister of this country and the government to either explain in detail or retract the notice that has been issued with respect to the distribution of voting cards. This so-called distribution of voting cards notice is actually a call to every district on St. Martin and every citizen of St. Martin residing in the different districts to come to the government building and pick up their voting card. There's no other way to describe it. We all can read English, and that's what it says. If something else was meant with this notice, let it be retracted as soon as possible. This thing is going to create a major issue because right now I use the word, and I stick to it, of voters suppression, meaning avoiding persons from being able to vote. What are our elderly expected to do? What are those who are working on the different days expected to do? How does that fit into the regulation that persons must be given time off to vote? So I'm making a public call and calling on you, Mr. Chairman, to ask the government of St. Martin to address that matter as soon as possible. Mr. Chairman, I want to address now, because I would not have the time to do it during the topic which we are discussing today. And that is that after more than 6 weeks, having requested a meeting, a question hour, the best thing for any minister is to be able to come and respond to members of parliament in a question hour. Why? Because he or she gets the questions in advance. And on the other hand, the members of parliament are limited in time to react to the answers that we'll be getting. So it's quite unfortunate that 6 weeks after a request for a question hour, the meeting is put on the agenda of parliament of today. And I hope that the questions following mine of 6 weeks ago, posed by any other member of parliament, are answered today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Sarah Westcott-Williams. The next person is MP Angelique Rumu. MP Rumu, you have the floor.
Pleasant good afternoon to you, Mr. Chairman. Pleasant good afternoon to our honorable minister present here today, to my honorable colleagues, and to the viewing and listening public and those in the Tribune. Mr. Chairman, I would like to address what MP Westcott-Williams just talked about, because indeed this has caused quite a stir within the community of St. Martin. But after just having had a discussion with the Prime Minister, and actually she was just on the radio clarifying this, and the Prime Minister did indicate that it was an option, but all voting cards will be delivered to everyone. So I just wanted to clarify that for the viewing and listening public, that the voting cards will be distributed to all voters as well. It's an option if the voters would like to go and collect it. However, those who, of course, opt to not collect it, their voting cards will be delivered to their homes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Rumu. Members of Parliament, thank you for your notifications. We have as agenda point for this public meeting, question hour. Questions from MP Sarah Westcott-Williams, directed to the Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication regarding taxi and bus licenses under document IS/076 2023-24 dated October 4, 2023. We go over to the agenda point. The intention of the question hour is to create the possibility to interact with ministers. After the passing of Hurricane Irma, Article 69 of the Rules of Order was proposed to introduce the question hour. During the question hour, only questions and answers will be given on the topic at hand. As we have had many question hours, I will shortly elucidate on the procedure for the question hour. The Member of Parliament will get the opportunity to read his or her questions as submitted for a maximum of 2 minutes under Article 69D under paragraph 3 of the Rules of Order. The Minister is given the opportunity to answer the questions for a maximum of 1 minute per question under Article 69D paragraph 3 of the Rules of Order. The Member of Parliament is then given the opportunity once more to ask additional questions for a maximum of 2 minutes under Article 69D paragraph 4 of the Rules of Order. The Minister is given 1 minute to answer each question under Article 69D paragraph 4 of the Rules of Order. The President then may allow other members of the Parliament to ask questions for a maximum of 1 minute about the same topic under the Article 69D, Paragraph 5 of the Rules of Order. The Minister is given 1 minute to answer each question under Article 69D, Paragraph 5 of the Rules of Order. During the question hour, no permission can be asked to hold any interpellation, nor can motions be submitted. Today, Monday, November 28, 2023, we have questions that were submitted by MP Sarah Westcott Williams under document IS 076 of 2023-24, dated October 4, 2023, for the Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunication. These questions were submitted in accordance with the Article 69 of the Rules of Order. The Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunication, Mr. Arthur Lambrix, was invited by the letter under UV/051/2023-24. Hence, in accordance with the Article 69D, Paragraph 3, Member of Parliament MP Sarah Westcott Williams will read her questions to the Minister. MP Sarah Westcott Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, obviously I don't have time to elaborate on the questions, so I go straight into them, which the Minister has more than a month ago. And my questions were, on the 4th of October of this year, 1, how many taxi and bus licenses were on record as of January 1, 2023? Question 2, how many are registered as per October 1, 2023? Please provide a numerical overview of all licenses for public transportation. That was the third question. Fourth, what are the moratoriums currently in place in public transportation, and what are the caps of these moratoriums? Question 5, what responses have been received to the ministry's call to swap licenses? How many of these responses to the call have been honored? 6, what is the most recent complete picture of public transportation licenses? And please provide this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Sarah Westcott Williams. I now give the floor to the Minister to answer the questions in accordance with Article 69D, Paragraph 3 of the Rules of Order. There are total 6 questions, and you have 6 minutes. Minister, you have the floor.
It's on? Thank you. Good afternoon, fellow colleague MPs. Good afternoon, those in the Tribune. Good afternoon to those listening via the media and social media. The questions asked by Ms. Sarah Westcott Williams. How many taxi and bus licenses were on record as of January 1st, 2023? When I got into office, actually there were no real records of exact numbers. However, they were estimated to be, when we double-checked, at 190 for buses and 395 for taxis. Of course, these still had some licenses in between that some people had passed away. They were not transferred to their next of kin. And some of them had some requests in but never honored yet, so we looked into all of those. How many are registered as per October 1st, 2023? October 1st I don't have, but I have a more recent date, which is October 14th. We have 238 bus licenses and 480 taxi. Question 3, please provide a numerical overview of all licenses for public transportation. We have, in total, plates issued 240 for the buses. The plates ordered and online that we have on the shelf are 300. For buses, for taxis, sorry, it's 550 ordered. We have in total 480 plates out. T-plates, we have 240 plates ordered. We have 122 plates that are out. I cannot put it as licenses because it wouldn't be fair, because some licenses have multiple plates. They might have 2 T-plates, or they might have more than one on the license. So we look more at the license and the actual plates that are distributed to get a better view of it. What are the moratoriums currently in place in public transportation, and what are the caps of these moratoriums? The bus is 300 is the cap. Taxis is 550. T-plates is 240. G-plates is 90. What responses have been received to the ministry's call to swap licenses? How many of these responses have been honored? We received 33 in total. There were 3 of them that did not fall under the process. They were actually asking for a new license, so those were avoided. Left us with 30. And then we had 1 that did, personally, the person retracted afterwards, didn't want to do it. So 29 in total, and all of them were honored. Just to give an overview, as an example, we actually retrieved 40 T-plates back on the shelf that were out in circulation because they were just roaming on the street and not doing what they were supposed to be doing. In accordance, in example, switched around 40 that came back and switched for approximately 7 taxis. So it was a kind of a cleanup, and it worked out how it was expected to work out. What is the most recent complete picture of the public transportation licenses? We have the bus with 300 as a cap. We have 240 out. We have 60 still available. The taxis are 550. We have 480 approximately that are out, 70 which are still available. The T-plate, we have 240. And out of those is 180 that are out, 60 that are still available. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Lambrix. MP Sarah Westcott-Williams now has the opportunity once more to ask additional questions for a maximum of 2 minutes under Article 69D, Paragraph 4 of the Rules of Order. MP Sarah, you have the floor.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in following up on the answers provided, which unless, in my case, I'm able to really go and sort of dissect the answers that have been given, it's absolutely not clear what the minister has stated. And I'm just as close to the answers as I was before the answers were given. That means nowhere. Mr. Chairman, based on what has the moratorium that is currently in effect been set, and when? The one that is currently in effect, 500 and something, I believe 550 taxi licenses. When was that set and based on what? Secondly, the licenses that have been given, how will these work in connection with trans-border, I'm talking French and Dutch, transportation? So how, because the French have their regulations where public transportation and operators of public transportation are concerned. So how does that fit? Mr. Chairman, I think for me the most important question, because I cannot be satisfied with an answer that the minister cannot provide the growth or the increase rather in terms of licenses January of this year, and after all the announcements made by the minister, come in and swap, you can change this license for that license. What has it done to the overall picture in public transportation? So one, when were these moratoriums set? Based on what were they set? After the many statements of the minister regarding, we have not increased the moratorium, we are just actually replacing licenses. But the picture that the minister has painted does not provide that kind of a picture. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Westcott-Williams. The Minister of TIAT now has the floor to answer the questions. Minister, you have the floor.
Okay, so the first question, the 550 and based on the moratorium, what was the numbers? How did we come up with it, if I'm not mistaken with what was said? For the past few years, I can say at least the last 5 years, government has been ordering 550 taxi plates. That is just the clear view of what has been going on. It has been being ordered. They have been remaining on the shelf, approximately 160 plates that remain on the shelf every year. They're not being picked up. They have not been found in the system that they have been addressed to anybody, assign a particular number. As an example, if we choose 509, It has never been on the road yet. In those 5 years, it has never been assigned to a license to someone that has a license. It's just been sitting on the shelf collecting dust. When I saw this as a minister, I saw it as a bad way to run business or to run the country. Because why order these kind of plates and have them sitting there when we are looking to generate money for government and to make sure money is coming into the coffers? Coming from the industry itself also, for over 20 years, having worked at the harbor, about 18 of them, doing tour operations and different things. I'm also working with the Taxi Association directly as a tour operator, one of the only ones doing so for many years. It has always been that there have been days in between, especially in season, that there is demand, but there is no supply for that demand. It's not only there, it is also at the airport that happens, it's also on the road, there's roaming taxis that happens. And it has been a cry from the cruise lines every time that we go to visit in the last 3 times for the year. How are you going to supply the demand for these cruise passengers when they come in? Why are you asking for more ships? Why are we providing you larger ships, but you cannot supply for this demand? This is why we looked at it, and we didn't just look at the moratorium as just moratorium without a cap. We actually applied the number that was on the shelf for those years and made that the cap, because that is what is available. That is what's on the shelf. And that is where that came from. When it comes to the French authorities and how will it work, the majority of the people that got these licenses in the swap, in the exchange, in the help to having their own permanent permit, these were all Dutch drivers, all Dutch passport holders. How they got their passport, that remains to be explained by government then. I just have to honor that they are Dutch citizens. They have a Dutch passport. They are equally entitled to a right like everyone else. And that is where we went with that part. They are allowed to go to the Francais and drive. Of course, the bus association has a maximum, I believe, to Marigot and other destinations that they can have certain drivers drive. If those lists are full, they're full, but there are alternate routes like Point Blanche, different routes that are being not serviced or under-serviced. So these drivers will come in handy. The increase for buses was approximately 35.
Minister, sorry to interrupt you. You got 45 seconds
Okay.
left.
35 that were passport holders, but they were held drivers in the system. They got their own. And there are approximately 15 new ones that are mixed. Majority are new. 50 for the taxis, which were held drivers, all with Dutch passports, and approximately 25 that were also new added to it. So in total, 75 and 50 for the buses. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Lambrix. Does any member of parliament have any questions for the minister regarding this topic? And I see MP Grisha Halliger Martin. Before I give the floor, maximum 1 minute about the same topic under Article 69D, paragraph 5 of the Rules of Order. MP Grisha Halliger Martin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of congestion, as we all know, at the harbor with the T's and the taxi licenses. Is the minister, through you, Mr. Chair, not overstepping his bounds by trying to add more T's and taxis at the port? Did the minister meet with the Taxi Association to get a better understanding of the concession, what the concession entails? Because as we know, the concession of the Taxi Association has a cap. There's a capacity cap. Is the minister aware of that? Also, what did the role of the chief cabinet of the minister play in issuing the T, taxi, and especially the bus licenses? The chief cabinet of the minister that's sitting right next to him. I don't need to mention the name, but just to be specific. Is or has the cabinet been in talks with bringing Uber to St. Martin? Any talks recently about that? We'd like to know that, Mr. Chairman. What is the criteria used to grant these T, taxi, and bus licenses? I'm trying to understand clearly. So because we're issuing 500 and something plates, that's the cap? And my last question, and most important question, did every single person that received the bus, T, taxi license, did every single one of them have a Dutch passport? Yes or no? Every single one? My minute is up?
Yes.
Okay.
Grisha, you are 1 minute and 11 seconds over, and I allowed that. Any other members of parliament for? Minister, you have 1 minute to answer each question.
Okay, so thank you.
1 sec. So first we go questions all. There are more questions. I see MP George Pantherflood. MP George, you have 1 minute for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me speak a little fast. Good afternoon to the chair, my colleagues in Parliament, of course, those that are sitting there, and the minister across from us, along with his support. Mr. Chairman, through you to the minister, the permits that are given to either taxis or bus drivers, should this be their only source of income, or are they to allow to have taxi license, bus license, plus a full-time job? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP George Pantherflood. The next person is MP Rolando Bryson. MP Bryson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question in terms of, and please forgive my voice, I have a question in terms of what we are actually doing now that this cleanup has happened to actually promote more business opportunities for taxis. As you know, in most jurisdictions, most countries, taxis are predominantly used by the local population. We, of course, depend on tourism, but we need to find incentives for more people. For example, if 10% of our population was to use taxis, that's 5,000 people. If 500 of them, if that amount was to spend an average of $500 a month, you're creating millions of dollars a month for taxis. The Department of Transportation has to come with solutions for that, and I would like to hear from the minister on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Bryson. I don't see any more MPs having any questions, so I will look to my right, and Minister, you have the floor.
Okay, so the first question from Ms. MP Halligan Martin. Capacity of the port and the cap for the concession, and if I spoke to the association before I did anything. Yes, I did reach out to the association reached out to me, a few members, some of which I'm seeing within the Tribune, with some concerns. Some of the concerns were T-plates doing taxi work, taxis doing T-plate. It was all a little bit of a mess and a little bit of a misunderstanding. So we did have the meeting. I did have that discussion with them. We did tell them what we were doing. Of course, it's not only the Taxi Association, the DSTA, you also have the Downtown Taxi Association, you also have the Maho Taxi Association, you have multiple taxi associations, also multiple groups of taxis that work together and do work. So it's unfair to just look at the Port Taxi Association when there's a lot more, which we are keeping everyone in mind, just not one group of people. My role of the Chief of Staff and what he has taken part in or not taken part in or what is being insinuated, I think he should answer that. And that can come in writing, because I cannot speak on behalf of anyone. All requests done with plates and with number plates were done via the first floor. So one thing that was done was everything was passed through the first floor of the building, which we have a booth for the TIAT ministry. All requests had to be submitted with relevant documents, which were form of ID, registration, income tax for the previous year, your health driver chauffeur as an example, a certificate or permit, and whatever other documents had to be submitted. But if they were not complete, they were not taken. And everything was passed through that floor and not through anyone else. The criteria on the plates, and if all were Dutch passport holders. Majority of them were passport holders, Dutch passport holders, as I mentioned. Approximately 50 to 55 from the taxi out of the 80 were Dutch passport holders. There were 25 new ones, which I can say approximately maybe 15 out of those 25 were passport holders, and there may be 10 or 15 that were not passport holders. However, they were permanent residents. Some of these permanent residents already held driver chauffeur permits from government and were driving under other persons for multiple years, some 15, 20 years already. Also seeing that the laws, which I guess are made in Parliament, are not stating that you have to have a Dutch passport to have such a permit, allows someone with a permanent residence and that status to receive one also, because they are considered by law to allow that. That is that question. The Uber, the topic did come up from my person. It was just a suggestion to the taxis, which no conversation was had with Uber ever, not from my part for sure. concerning that, but the topic did come up with taxis that I recommended to them that before it gets to the state of Uber, as an example, reaching into the country and every M plate or R plate or P plate doing Uber, that maybe it would be a good idea, which is all I suggested, and it didn't go any further than a suggestion because I heard a response, which was a suggestion to contact Uber and to try to lock it in that only taxis would be permitted to drive that and would have to provide their taxi permit and able to order Uber and that system, just to stop it from everyone doing it and the gypsy situation getting a little bit more out of hand than it already is. But it was not received well by everyone, although some understood it, some didn't. So I left it there, and that discussion did not continue. The next questions, which one? MP George Pontiflet, yes, it should be that everybody that has their permit, that is their sole income as a driver. Of course, in the past, there are a lot, and we are busy, going through them, seeing who is maybe overlapping and still has a job or is working and has a permit. What we have done in the policy, and this is a policy-based something now that the policy department is working on, is that every 5 years that you would have to return your permits, or not return them, but go in with your new documents just to update your file. And at that time, it will be able to then, if we see anyone with those situations, to be able to reprimand it or to fix it at that time. That was added for that reason. So money-wise, for the MP Rolando Bryson, monetary-wise for the permits, of course, there's an extra income for the country. Also, the health drivers, they're no longer receiving permits anymore for 5 years or 3 years. They're receiving it monthly now because it's only for persons that are traveling or if they're indeed sick that you should request a health driver permit. Instead of paying that fee once for 3 years or 5 years, if you would like to have it for that time and it is the intention, then you would pay it every month now. So that is already an increase also for the coffers. And in general, there is business out there for the taxis. It is just not anymore, that people are looking to take taxis or are seeking to take a taxi all the time, because we do have return passengers coming to the island 5 or 6 times back to back. They know the island, they start taking car rentals. New packages have to be created, new incentives have to be created for those people. It's just like when we go on vacation, we have the same, we rent our own cars now, we don't take a taxi to the mall anymore, we drive ourselves. This is just a new trend, and it is not impossible. I've spoken to some of the members I see in here with new ideas, new incentives where they can get more money out of the business and make sure that they do monopolize it and get what is reserved to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you to members of Parliament. I would like to thank the Honorable Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, Mr. Arthur Lambrix, and his support staff for their participation here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this question hour. I thank you all for your participation, and I hereby close this question hour meeting.